everyone? This is Jacob Levy from Pod Abilities. So I have here Dylan. Dylan, how do you pronounce your last name?
Rafaty.
Dylan Rafaty. He is in Plano, Texas. And today we're just talking about a little bit with his experiences growing up with a disability, the type of work that he does, and we'll get into some interesting stories. Thanks for joining us, Dylan.
Thank you so much, Jacob. I appreciate joining on your podcast and love to connect and chat.
Awesome. I can't remember exactly how we met, but we definitely connected on LinkedIn.
That is correct. You sent me a nice message, and from there, I opened myself up to, I get a lot of messages from people, and it's always nice to hear from different people with their different experiences. And but yeah, we started messaging, and sure enough, we're here today. So I'm excited.
Awesome. Actually, now I remember how I found you. I was doing a search and I used the keyword disability. And I found this way to like tinker with LinkedIn's algorithm where I can basically locate anyone by keyword. Keywords
Yes.
are king and queen on this platform. And that's how I found you. I typed in disability, did a filter, like a special filter, and your name popped up because you have that word somewhere in your profile.
Yeah. Well, in your sort of under your name on LinkedIn, if they have this ability where you can include as many characters as possible to sort of like your tagline. And so I put myself as ally with the two ones that represents accessibility, um, author, executive, disability rights activist, ESG, DEI, which is diversity, equity, inclusion. So having those kind of values or tagline under your name does increase visibility. And you're right, when you do that search button, the way the algorithm is set, people are able to find other people very quickly.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. Um, so let's get right into it. Can you tell me a little bit about your experience or your relationship with a disability?
Sure. So I am deaf and hard of hearing. So basically, deaf in the right ear, and then partially deaf with the hearing aid. Right now, I'm wearing an iPad, not iPad, Pro. What do you call those?
The
Um,
pods, the
Pod. Yeah,
AirPods.
the
I know
earpods. That's
pad,
correct.
pod. There's like
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, the AirPods Pro. Let's call it that. And so yeah, so I'm wearing that right now, but I have spinal back and neck fusion, and it was due to my scoliosis surgery that creates a fusion on my back, and then later had spinal neck fusion surgery, which limits my mobility in a sense where I'm not able to move left and right, and so I do require a sort of a rollable chair that allows me to navigate 360 if I needed to. And those are my slight disabilities today. Previously, I did have glasses that were very thick lens glasses. And thanks to flapless LASIK, I was able to have nearly 20/20 vision. So that before LASIK, Fopus LASIK, I was wearing these lenses where when I take it off, everything was blurry. And so um, it was, and those glasses, playing sports or something, I literally had to wear a thing on my glasses to hold it to where, it doesn't fall down so easily because I would
Croquis.
spend a fortune on glasses falling apart um, uh, from my face. But yeah, those are my slight disabilities. To your second part of your question, have I had an experience of working with other people with disabilities? Yes. Short answer is yes. And the reason I say that is, you know, growing up, I went through special education. I was part of special education classes, from resource to modification to special ed to general classes with modifications. So reality, I had a diverse base of friends and classmates with disabilities. I also had experience, and I'll give you a time about 6 years ago, maybe seven. You're right, 7 years ago. I went to a conference called the Texas State Independent Living Council Conference, I believe. And I didn't know, I had no idea. This was right before I started doing my own career, my own business. And when I went there, I was immediately blown away by a specific population that I never really had interfaced on a full basis, and that is people with physical disabilities, many of whom that rely on a wheelchair or motorized wheelchair, or people that use walking sticks. There's a lot of different um, uh, disabilities that were in the room. And I noticed the first thing that was missing at this conference, how tight this place was, where tables are not spread out. It was very hard for people to navigate and roll through around the ballroom, and especially in the hallways. So I was like, wow. But it helped me see the need for accessibility, but it also helped me interface up and close with other people with physical disabilities. And I left there. It took 3 days, 3 days to really see not only how much I've learned as far as independent living, employment, transportation, healthcare for people with disabilities, but also the people that I've interacted with. And I'll be honest with you, I was wiped out. I was exhausted, but I had so much thought. I just literally had to put it on paper, and from there, I go to different communities like the one with deaf and hard of hearing community, and you would think, people would be loud and whatever. No, it is very quiet. And many of them either know how to use American Sign Language, or people like myself who needed an interpreter, and they provided that for me. And I was able to interact with people with diverse hearing disabilities or hearing abilities. And so those are my two unique experiences of interfacing and interacting and communicating with people with disabilities.
That's awesome. Yeah, when you kept saying, like, you walked into a room and there were all these, like, maybe sort of design flaws and things like that for physical handicaps, things like that, I immediately thought of, like, the term, like, universal design. They have, like, ramps and things like that for accessibility, which, yes, back in the day, there was, like, such limited design and so many flaws, in just like building in the blueprints of buildings. There was just such a lack of accessibility.
Well, and I'm glad you brought up universal design. One of the things that I often are now advocating for is not only in local governments, but in the state level, any government facility like a city council chambers or facilities, recreational facility, any of those things, they need to prioritize the access, the accessibility, and that includes not only physical, but also audiovisual and other components. But oftentimes people think of ADA as physical. Reality, it covers a wide spectrum of people with disabilities. And in a word that we use is called intersectionality, and of people and representation of people. And you can't just focus on one disability, you got to focus on all. And once you focus on all, you actually, if you think about it, the enhancements or the improvements or the renovations that you need to implement in these older facilities or locations, you actually help everyone, not only your neighbor or your other person that may not have disabilities, but you're allowing everyone to be included, have a seat at the table, to have their voice represented, free from judgment. And I think this is what is happening these days, is that people are becoming more aware. Like, for example, when we think of universal design from a physical place or new development, how about online communication? When we think of this, some people rely on ASL interpreters that come on Zoom meetings, or Microsoft Office or whatever, or closed captioning, or the ability to have captions or subtitles in meetings, so and make that accessible, meaning free or affordable, so people can actually have it as part of their platform. You know, when we rely on these, we also think about the accessible delivery of curriculum in classrooms. I'm taking online master's program, and sometimes professors or teachers in public ed need to consider the value of color contrast or the ability of large lettering and words so people can access and visually see the curriculum better. There needs to be best practices on how we communicate with each other in a large Zoom group setting. And sometimes people have their microphones on, but they're not even using it. And we hear large sounds in the back. So reality is we need to consider not only the universal design or making transportation or housing or workplaces universally accessible, but also think about the online portion, making that as well universally accessible.
Absolutely. And it's funny you mentioned that, like from an education perspective. So I'm currently working as like a special education teacher, 100% remote, right? I live in one place, I'm teaching in a whole nother state. And what you just said about, like, teachers should know about font and accessing this and blah, blah, blah. From a special ed perspective, I see it as like an accommodation or a modification, right? That's like the language I'm thinking. But it's funny because like then you get into higher ed and it's like, yeah, this should totally be accessible. Like they should modify the text. They should these are just simple accommodations or modifications, leveling the playing field, so to speak. But they don't. They just worry about their, their class as a whole, right? So it will always exist. It's omnipresent, like it's everywhere.
Well, that once you apply that as a standard practice, it becomes easy after that. It's kind of like learning a new skill. One of the things that I always tell people is that in entrepreneurship, I was tackling a lot of different things, but one thing I appreciated the process was I was not only enjoying what I do or what I love to do, my passion was there, and I was always curious. And with that curiosity comes with learning. And there's a lot of things that I did not know about accessibility or technology online. And it took about a good 6 months to really dive deep inside of me to understand it and interpret it, and not only interpret it, but put it into action. And that is where I'm helping new people, whether you're a general ed teacher or an elected official running for office or going to be already in office, city staff or state agencies, or big enterprises with their executives and so forth. I'm helping them, not only mentoring them and advising them, but also really educating them on these practices so they can not only do it for themselves, but for their peers, but also for people with disabilities that they eventually will work with or collaborate with. And what's great is that people oftentimes work just with the community of disabilities or their families or whoever they're affecting. They don't often open new doors of people that definitely need to be trained on this. And so that's where my devotion has been, is organizations are doing the great work, but my focus is opening new doors, whether it's gaining access to services, making sure that we're represented and included at the table, free from judgment, or the ability to have growth, meaning if people are working with your organization, allowed an opportunity for them to grow or build into leadership positions, or the addition of not only services, but meaningful opportunities. Many times people don't have opportunities. And if sometimes we have to open ourselves up to sort of enable or echo the need for opportunities for people with disabilities.
I couldn't agree more. And I also think it's important for like upper management leadership to see a different perspective, because they have, they have their agenda. They have to, keep a well-oiled machine, things like that. But they also need to see that, like, it's not just people with disabilities, it's people with massive abilities as well. It's not just the disability, it's the ability. I see a lot of disabilities as like superpowers. I don't see them as a disability. I see it as like don't hone in on a weakness, but go all in on your strengths.
Yeah.
Like acknowledge your weakness. Okay, we all have weaknesses. Absolutely. But like go all in on your strengths. Like
Absolutely.
if you dominate this field, like go all in and show your employer that. A lot of it is just like employers are just not aware. They just see, this person checked the box on the equal opportunity employer, the job application, right? So they get this like stigma. There's a stigma. I think there still is a stigma.
Well, there is everywhere, but reality is a lot of people are missing the fact that we could do more by targeting areas or people or organizations or businesses or any institution, academic institution or agency, and find key people that not only are navigators or potential navigators or influencers in their respective fields, and educate them on this level of area. Because reality, I'll be honest, it takes a lot of work, a lot of time, but the end result is maximum, is the greatest thing you can ever have. Like I just told you earlier before coming on, because of my navigation and influencing role within my local community, there was some talk about accessibility in city council renovations in their chambers. But due to this 2 years in the making or 3 years in the making, people are not only the people that are elected on council are more aware, more educated, and due to my heavy persistence and passion on this area, they not only supported the need for accessibility, but also the importance of representing all people and seeing not only their challenges of accessing the chambers or audiovisual equipment or whatever, but it's because of one person making an influence, an impact with one area, and making sure that new people are brought into our community to not only be a voice, but as an advocate, as a leader, and as an ambassador for our community. Anybody can do it, including you.
Absolutely. I really like what you said about, I'll give it another analogy, but that like helping people with disabilities from like a design perspective, things like that, in employment, it really creates this ripple effect, because while it's helping people with disabilities or PWD, it's helping everyone. It's like this massive inclusion effect that's inadvertently helping everyone. It's not just helping, even though people with disabilities make up over like 1 billion plus people in the world. It's really helping everybody. I feel like it's just not seen that way.
Well, the reason is one council member that I saw tonight really talked about from his experience of having the different levels of attention to difficulties that people have, and only looked at it from his lens, not just people with disabilities. That's the value. That right there just tells you not only he understands our community, but he's looking at from his own lens what challenges are being made. And if we were to make this improvement or adaptation or this renovation, it would not only help people with disabilities, but it'll help people like me. And the way he said that was incredible. And that to me is an advocate, a leader, not only a leader, but he's also an advocate that truly understands the needs and where it needs to be placed. And I think that's what we need to do as persons with disabilities, as advocates, as activists. We need to educate new people in new communities, in new business and organizations to take on those roles too.
That reminds me of what you were just mentioning about what this leader was saying. He's exuding massive levels of empathy and self-awareness, which, like, leaders, if you're a true leader, like you serve your employees. It's not the other way around. Really, you're serving them. Like, how can I help you? How can I add more value, service? So that was very poignant what you said. I totally agree with that. One last question. I feel like this is packed with value, so thank you. If you could create a bumper sticker and leave a message to the rest of the world, like while we're sitting in traffic or whatever, what would it say? It could either be towards the general population or people with disabilities. What would it say?
Well, I have a great 3-word tagline that I use on every post, on every tweet, on every comment that I use to remind people, and I encourage other people to put this as part of their hashtag, and that is hashtag let's work inclusively. And the reality is, less is like that adjective, and then work inclusively, work meaning we got work to do, and we got there's a lot of different ways we can work together. And then inclusively is really having the thought of diversity of thought, diversity of people with disabilities, diversity of actions and abilities that we can do together, whether it could be a topic like, pushing for renovation funding, or the need for accessible housing or transportation, the need for hiring and recruitment and retention of people with disabilities in organizations or businesses, or the idea on an online forum like we're doing right now. We are working inclusively together. We're communicating with each other. There's so many different ways you can describe let's work inclusively. And I started that sort of name, verbiage, tagline since I started my journey. And that is what I would have on my bumper sticker. And I'm encouraging everyone to use the hashtag let's work inclusively.
That's beautiful. Hashtag let's work inclusively, kind of a tongue twister. I love it. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed that. All about inclusion, universal design, things like that, working with different organizations. Dylan, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and I appreciate it as well. This was a great talk, great chat, and I look forward to hearing what everybody else thinks. I like that open dialogue, and if they ever want to reach out, they can always find me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I have Dylan here. This is Jacob Levy with Podabilities signing out. Thanks so much.